Chapter 15. After all we had seen and heard during that meditation class, there was something to seriously think about, especially for me, being on the verge of death. God, these are the answers to my questions, which I have been seeking for so long. Is the brilliant formula of achieving immortality really so simple? Control your thoughts, believe, and love. Is it possible that this will help me reach a saving shore, an edge of eternity from which the immortals already observe life, all those who have come to know themselves and their divine nature? Is it possible that my inner self will be able to break loose from death's grip? Even if I don't have time to win back my body, I will still be able to become free, or at least I will be prepared to meet with the unknown. Such thoughts created an unusual inspiration in me and a burst of internal power. I decided not to leave things for tomorrow, but to start working immediately, right now, because who knows what tomorrow will bring for me. First, I tried to examine my thoughts, but I felt so enthusiastic and inspired that I was unable to stop at anything specific, as all my material thoughts suddenly disappeared in the face of such vigor. Then I started to investigate my sensations. Only now did I notice that I was so absorbed with my inner content that I even started to view the outside world completely differently. This was some kind of a new vision, a point of view on the old, as they say, worn-out problems which was previously unknown to me. A new vision surrounded me from all sides, like a cocoon, detaching my consciousness away from the gray, everyday routine and its trivial worries. I had the impression that I existed by myself and the rest of the world existed by itself. Moreover, I observed for the first time the workings of my body from the outside. It was making its usual movements, as if it were an autopilot. It came home mechanically, took a shower mechanically, ate mechanically, and went mechanically into its allocated space, that is to say, into its room. At the same time, my true self was observing the body and thinking about my salvation. This small discovery shocked me. It turns out that there is a true self in me, and a kind of bodily autopilot. But then, there was more. Once again replaying the conversation with Sensei in my mind, I recalled his words. Have you ever thought how you move in space and who moves your extremities? Examining myself from a new point of view, I reflected. Indeed, who moves my extremities, my true self or the autopilot? My persona looked at my open palm and decided to conduct a simple experiment. I thought, I need to clench and unclench my fist, and my hand obediently executed it. And now I am not going to move my fingers. But at this time, a wild thought flashed across my mind. I will clench my fist anyway. Under the influence of this command, my fingers clenched and unclenched again. Oh, I was surprised. And who was that thinking in me? Who is there playing boss in my thoughts? Gathering myself up again this time, I was more persistent and concentrated my thoughts. I won't move my fingers. That's what I want, and it shall be so. Strangely enough, my hand didn't even move, and this wild, mad thought seemed to have never existed in my mind. Wow! I was even more surprised. This means that when I was relaxed about my thoughts, this someone started to invisibly manage my consciousness and my body at his discretion. Whereas when I strictly control thoughts, he disappears somewhere without a trace. Gosh! Nevertheless, I was so happy to discover this fact. It was as if I had tracked a spy who had been thoroughly camouflaged for many years in my most secret department. Yes, this wise guy is much more dangerous than that stupid autopilot. I should be more vigilant. It's easy to say, but hard to do. When I started to practice meditations, I understood that this trickster visited my thoughts all the time in the moment of relaxation, and especially during concentration on meditation, constantly diverting my attention to outside matters. He carried it all out in such a clever and logical way that I didn't notice when I went off track in concentration. But when I went deeper and focused thoughts on meditation, the trickster disappeared. Yet as soon as I weakened control, he would appear again. What a skunk, impudent and bothersome, my persona thought, trying once again to concentrate on meditation. When I finished the meditation, I understood that it wasn't easy to fight this enemy number one. I need to ask Sensei how to cope with this trickster, my persona thought, falling asleep. Otherwise, he is going to spoil everything for me. The next morning, when my burst of emotions had faded away a little after the day before, I began to observe myself again from the outside. Once again, my body somehow came off the warm bed and started to mechanically perform its morning ritual, getting ready for school. My mind, as it seemed to me, was still in sweet slumber, and that's why I didn't feel like thinking about anything. While walking my usual route to school through the city park, I was enjoying the surrounding stillness, the morning freshness, and the rustling of fallen leaves. I really liked this state of peace. My mind was sleeping, my body was walking in a prescribed direction while I just felt well and cozy inside. I felt that this was my true self. However, at school, the situation drastically changed. My persona got caught in a whirl of events, information, and emotions. As a result, I was completely confused about the nature of my thoughts because they came in a continuous torrent, and it was hard to sort them out, what was mine and what wasn't. And the whole day passed in this wild rhythm. Chapter 16. In the evening, when I met the guys at the tram stop, I hastened to share my achievements with them and then asked with interest, "How about your results? Did you think after yesterday's meditation class?" "There is nothing to think about," Kostya said arrogantly. "Me is me, the whole one and indivisible. I'm not a maniac to split into parts." "Oh yeah, you're not a maniac, you're a genius. From a psychiatric ward. Napoleon isn't bothering you too much, is he?" Andrei teased him with a smile. "Stop it, I don't have excessive megalomania," said Kostya and then added, "Great people don't suffer from it." "Of course," Andrei laughed. "I didn't expect any other answer. Calm down or you'll start with the same old song and dance. Tell me more about your experiences," my persona said impatiently. "There's not much to tell," Andrei answered. "Sensei told us a lot of useful information yesterday. There's enough work for the brain for many years to come. That's what I was doing yesterday. I was reflecting on whether I had correctly formulated my goals for the future, or if I should partially adjust them, taking into account the new information." "Wow, you started using classy words," Slava said sarcastically. "Are you going to join the Academy of Sciences?" "Oh no, Sensei is quite enough for me." "That's true," I said. "How did the meditation go for you?" "You know, a lot better than yesterday. Thoughts didn't crawl into my head as much. My concentration improved right away, and all sensations became clearer." "Tatiana, what about you? How did you get on?" "Well, to tell the truth, I didn't do meditation, and didn't try to think. I was so tired yesterday that I barely made it to bed. In the morning, I had to take my younger brother to kindergarten, then I went to buy milk, and after that, I went straight to school. There's no time for reflection when you have so much to do." "Right," Kostya backed up her excuses. "You should not think, you should act. Youth is given for action and old age for reflection." "Sure," Andrei teased him, "and when you're old, you will be creaking with your decrepit voice, thinking with the last remnants of your brain. Oh, if only youth knew, if only old age could." The guys laughed again, teasing Kostya. "And what about you?" I asked Slava. "I did okay. Okay in what sense?" "Just the same as all of you." "It's all clear," Andrei smiled, making a hopeless gesture towards him. Chapter 17. At the next training, we were warming up before the beginning of exercises as usual. A crowd of men with imposing appearance, led by Volodya, entered the dojo. "Wow, what a crowd!" Andrei was surprised. Victor smiled and said to Stas, "This is a couple of guys." "What do you mean?" "Volodya called me yesterday and said that he would come to the training with a couple of his guys." "My goodness, there's probably half a regiment here," Stas said with a smile. "Exactly. That's what I'm telling you." Volodya came up to greet Sensei, who was standing not too far from us. The senior guys hurried to join them. "Sensei, do you mind?" Volodya pointed towards his guys. "No problem," Sensei answered easily as always. "Did you watch TV last night?" "When? I barely have enough time as it is." "Just imagine they showed our Sansanich yesterday." "Our Sansanich?" Zhenya was surprised. "It's been ages since we last heard of him." "Oh, now he is really famous. He says that he lived in a cave somewhere and learned a Russian martial art, and now he calls himself a Russian ninja. What is most interesting is that he demonstrated your techniques, Sensei, with the only difference being that he tells everybody that it's a long-forgotten Slavic style that he has revived." "Not bad," Stas grinned. "You see, Volodya, if you hadn't kicked Sansanich so hard at that time, you would have been his partner now." "No, he wouldn't," Zhenya said archly. "Why not?" "What do you mean, why not? If Volodya hadn't beaten him up so well back then, the man would never have seen the light." The guys roared with laughter. "You shouldn't have treated him like that back then," Sensei said. "He's an old man, and we should respect our elders." It was his own fault. Why was he asking for trouble? Volodya began to justify himself, and then added in a softer voice, "I barely touched him, just struck him by accident." "Exactly, Sensei, that's the way it was," Zhenya joined in. "I remember it as if it happened yesterday." Volodya put out his fist while Sansanich was hitting it with his head for almost 5 minutes. But see how much good that has done him. The man immediately saw the light and became a Russian ninja. The guys burst out laughing again. Let him amuse himself." Sensei waved his hand with a good-natured smile. "The man has found his gold mine. Just let him work." "Yesterday we were on duty in the barracks," Volodya continued his story, "and saw on TV Sansanich flapping his legs and throwing his guys down. We had a good laugh, recalling our youth. Even my newcomers are far better. So, we decided to come today, in order to gain some knowledge of the real art, to replenish our knowledge reserves, so to say." "Sounds like a good plan," Sensei agreed. The guys continued to tell stories of bygone trainings and a whole bunch of funny incidents related to them. In the end, Volodya's guys joined the conversation, and it switched from martial art issues to a philosophical dispute about relationships between people. "Well, I dealt with them this way on principle," one of Volodya's guys fervently defended his point of view. "Principle is a stupid resistance to reality akin to idiocy. Principle," Sensei had hardly finished this sentence when the senior guys continued his thought in chorus, "is good only in exact sciences as a synonym to an axiom." "Exactly," the teacher confirmed. Volodya got a little bit embarrassed. "Well, I tried hard to explain this to them." "I guess you didn't try hard enough. What cannot be understood through the mind will be hammered in through the body." "Okay, since you know it all so well, you shouldn't laugh." I realized the meaning of Sensei's last words later, when the training began. Sensei warned that today we were going to train at full force, and those who wouldn't endure the tempo could step aside to the left corner of the gym and polish up strikes there, without disturbing the others. We ruffled up our feathers like sparrows and whispered with pride amongst ourselves. "Us not endure?" Andrei said quietly. "Don't even say it," Kostya added. "We will show them right now what we are capable of." "It won't be the first time," I uttered carelessly, recalling the warm-up of the senior senpai. Yet our arrogance flew away immediately after the first few minutes of the warm-up. I had never seen such a tough training before. It was a real school of survival. The crowd was running through the gym in a mad tempo, overcoming constantly changing obstacles. In less than 40 minutes, many of us, including my persona, were already crawling over those objects almost on all fours. Groaning nearby, Tatiana uttered, "It's so awful. Like in that joke, 'Dear ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, residents of Slaughterville.' The last one is for sure about us. I feel like I'm a native of that town." The first victims appeared in the left corner of the gym, but our group continued training stubbornly. However, later it became even worse. After that marathon race with a series of various exercises, we started doing push-ups. I don't know how many times we did it. I just remember the count was over 100. My hands were shaking as if I had been using a jackhammer, and my body was curving like a caterpillar when trying to get up, not so much due to these vibrations as due to the thrusts of my saving buttocks, because it seemed to me that only this part of my body had any strength left. I started to look more and more often towards the left corner, where a growing number of people crawled to this saving oasis. Moreover, Tatiana traitorously joined them and was waving at me alluringly. Meanwhile, the senior senpai was counting push-ups. In order to raise people's mood, he jokingly kept saying like a toastmaster, "Sensei has a sheepdog that lets everybody into the house but doesn't let anyone out. So let's do 10 push-ups for the quick wit of this smart dog that doesn't eat its bread for nothing." While everyone was getting more exhausted with every count, Sensei was walking around the big circle of sweating people, searching for those whom he could add weight to with his palm. I should note, when he pressed you with his palm, as Andre said, it felt like a truck had run over you. During the second round, when Sensei came up to me jerking through the push-ups as if in convulsions, I thought, this is the end. If he puts his hand on me, I will surely be flattened like a fly against the glass. Despite my expectations, the teacher seized me by my kimono from above, like a kitten by the scruff of the neck, and started helping me rise from the floor, evoking laughter from the guys around. Meanwhile, Victor went on. Sensei also has a cat samurai who became so self-confident that it even fights against dogs. So let us do 10 push-ups for his desires to always match his abilities. My bones were aching from such a strain, while Victor continued telling his funny puns. I was already cursing Samurai's flea, Mashka, that jumped very far, and the mouse that lived in a woodshed and ran so fast, and those Siamese battle fishes that had lightning reactions and piranha's manners. In other words, all those living creatures that dwelled in Sensei's house. Finally, after doing the last round of push-ups for the manhood of Parrot Keshka, who had managed to breed 5 nestlings, we fell to the floor completely exhausted. However, in less than a minute, we were laid out again in stacks, and the crowd started to jump over the bodies of their long-suffering brethren, accidentally crushing their extremities on the way. Every now and then in the gym, somebody, with their eyes bulging, would let out a restrained howl. Ouch! My persona could no longer endure it all and joined the left flank of the weaklings. It's high time, Tatiana said. But our rest didn't last long. When the warm-up was over, we started intensive work on basic techniques, strikes, and moves. I noticed that Sensei devoted more time to Volodya's guys, explaining and showing them a series of new techniques. They were throwing each other so easily while practicing strikes that I was simply shocked by their endurance and inexhaustible force. It was as if there hadn't been a grueling warm-up with all its consequences. After 2.5 hours of intensive training, we only had enough strength to think about how to survive the additional training session. Of course, nobody forced us. If we wanted to leave, we could leave. But our curiosity was bigger than physical torture. Since Volodya had brought his guys, the most interesting spectacle would be ahead. And we weren't mistaken. Chapter 18. When most of the group had left, Sensei began to demonstrate some special techniques on how to use an opponent's force. Divided into pairs, the guys started to practice them. Tatiana and I also tried to do that, but our feeble bodies ended up hanging on each other, like tired boxers in the last round. Upon seeing our parody of sparring, Sensei separated us and paired us up with guys. I immediately felt a surge of energy. As they say, where did it come from? Exercising yet another kick, Ruslan, who looked like a skinny ant against his partner Zhenya, complained to Sensei, "Is it even possible to knock out such a giant? He is impenetrable like solid armor. If he would attack me, I could at least use his own force against him, as you said. But what if I need to attack him? What can I do against this stubborn rhino? He's a heap of muscles." A heap of muscles is nothing. In martial arts, strength is not the most important thing. In the East, there is a saying, Arms and legs are nothing more than a continuation of the body, while the body, in turn, is a continuation of the mind. In other words, the main thing is knowledge and skills. Then even the weakest woman can knock out or even kill the strongest athlete in the world with just a touch of one finger. Well, theoretically it is possible, Zhenya smiled. Especially if she's beautiful, then one glance is enough. But seriously, in my opinion, it is practically impossible. It is possible, replied Sensei. An athlete? An athlete. With one finger? With one finger. Without force? Without force. I don't believe... Zhenya didn't have time to finish his sentence when Sensei touched one of his neck muscles, a little below the right ear, with a light movement of the middle finger of his left hand. Unexpectedly for everyone, Zhenya's face became distorted as if he had chewed a dozen lemons with the right side of his mouth. His right leg quickly gave way, and he fell to the floor before he knew what was happening. His right arm was unresponsive and looked like a rag. Zhenya glanced at Sensei with frightened eyes, twitching with the left side of his body. "Osh not shobash," Zhenya could only hiss, trying to say something coherent. We were standing and watching in shock how a young and healthy guy had turned into a helpless, half-paralyzed old man. "What shoosh I do?" Sensei bent over Zhenya's living corpse and touched some points on his back and abdomen. He did it so quickly and skillfully that I didn't even have time to see where he pressed. Zhenya began to gradually recover, massaging his suffering extremities. "Howie sheet!" "So how are you doing, Doubting Thomas?" Sensei asked. "Sensei, you should have warned me in advance. My brain was its last guy rush. Gosh, almost burn it down," Zhenya enunciated with difficulty in his broken, hissing language. "What a pity it didn't," the teacher said with disappointment jokingly. "At least bugs there would have died off. Sometimes it is actually useful as a preventive measure." "Sensei, tell us the recipe for this poison." Stas jokingly joined the conversation, evidently being the first to recover after the shock. "Well, the recipe is simple. You need to know where, when, and how." "It sounds logical, but could you give us more details?" Volodya made an attempt to clarify. "More details? There is a great number of BAPs in the human body." "What?" Zhenya didn't understand. "BAPs, biologically active points." "They are not points damage, they are ballistic missiles," said Zhenya with ironic indignation. "Moreover, wish autopilot." The guy smiled at his painstaking speech. "Absolutely right. This proves once again that any knowledge can be turned into a weapon. So, this effect of ballistic autopiloted missiles is caused by no other reason than an accurate point impact on biologically active points in a human body." "And what are these points?" one of the guys asked with interest. "How do they work?" "Well, it's a certain area of skin with general innervation. Located in this zone, receptors send signals through nerves which, in turn, transfer those signals not only into the spinal cord, but also via centripetal and extraspinal tracts up to the cerebrum. There, a certain interlocking of the arising unconditioned reflexes occurs. Moreover, this process is reflected in cortical analyzers as well, with a formation of conditioned reflex connections. To put it simply, a certain command for the body is being formed there. So, will it lead to such an effect? Not only. A person can be immobilized, knocked out for a while, or even programmed to cease to exist on the physical level at a specific time. So all you have to do is hit this point hard? Not really. All processes inside the body take place at very small amounts of energy. If you affect these points with threshold stimuli, that is to say, with weak ones, that exerts a much greater influence on the body's functions than strong stimuli do. At that moment, Zhenya stood up and tried to revive his legs by walking around, all the while dragging his right leg and shaking his right hand. "My dear mother, such needles. Ash if my right side hash gone numb." "What a lazy bum," joked Sensei. "He would just lie on the couch eating pies all day long. You should train more. I kind of sweated ash much ash every budgie. I mean, you should train your mind more so as not to make a fool of yourself." Where did you hit him so gently? Volodya wondered. It is the so-called Botkin herb's point. If I had pressed there another way, the effect would have been completely different. And if I had affected the plexus of nearby splanchnic nerves with the same impulse force, I could have caused a spasm in his thyroid artery, which in turn would have caused a disorder in the thyroid gland. This would have led to overall weakening of his immune system, or its complete cessation. In that case, he would have died on his own from any infection. Zhenya even stopped moving after hearing such a speech. Shanks, you've sheely calmed me down, which such a cheerful prospect. You also said where, when, and how, one of Volodya's guys uttered. What do you mean, when? The thing is that apart from the fact that you should know the exact location of a point and how much force to apply to it, you should also know the time of the day when this point is most active. And that's it? Volodya smiled. Even now, Zhenya didn't miss an opportunity to joke, still in his hissing language. Tell me, doesn't it come with a store map of Tshe universe? Sensei smiled. It depends for whom. For a fool, even that won't be enough. How can we know all these points and figure them out? Stas asked. The simplest way to understand something is certainly to examine and to feel it on yourself, especially the impulse of pressing. This is very important. Sure, but what if we damage something in ourselves? Victor suggested half in jest. You won't damage anything. There are antagonistic points on the human body for this purpose, which neutralize a given stimulus or spasm. Everything in nature is maintained in equilibrium. It's better to try it on others, Kostya uttered, smiling. That won't work, Sensei said. No matter how much you try it on others, you'll never achieve the right effect until you feel the power of this impact in yourself. May we try it right now, only in combat mode, so to say? One of Volodya's guys asked. You may. And may we try it too? Someone else in the same group wondered. Yes, go ahead. 3 volunteers from Volodya's team and Ruslan walked out to Sensei. Stas, who also joined them, offered the same to Volodya, but the latter responded, Do you think I'm a full-time punching bag? Well. Zhenya hobbled over, sat next to Volodya on the sports bench, and addressed Stas. Go ahead, pal. 1 shekin, and Jer is no longer head anymore. And the itch will be your own fault. Anyone else? Sensei asked, looking at Volodya's guys. At this moment, my persona plucked up courage and stepped forward, evoking smiles on the faces of the guys around. Where are you going? Sensei was surprised. A cowardly thought flashed in my head. Really, why did I come out? But it was too late to retreat. May I try? Aren't you afraid? Only of tickling. Flustered, I blurted out my dad's favorite joke. All right, if you want to join the ranks of kamikazes, you are welcome. And already addressing the other volunteers, he added, Let's work at full capacity. Your task is to win this fight by any means. May we work in a group? One of Volodya's guys asked. You may. Fight as you like, you have absolute freedom of action. While Sensei turned away, Volodya's guys came together in a circle, negotiating something in their own military language of gestures. Ruslan and Stas also whispered to one another. I stood among those giant athletic bodies like a mouse without any idea what I could do with my power of a small fly against a hurricane wind. Unfortunately, nothing special came to my mind. Okay, whatever happens, happens, I thought. The guys finally took up their fighting positions around Sensei. Only I was standing in the same place. When the senior senpai gave the command to attack, Volodya's guys made a circle around Sensei and began to attack him simultaneously at different levels. Surprisingly, Sensei easily avoided their strikes and then launched a counterattack so quickly that all I saw were chaotically falling bodies. My knees were trembling with fear. Then Ruslan and Stas tried to attack the teacher. At that very moment, while dealing with them, Sensei turned his back to me, at a distance of an outstretched arm. A thought flashed through my mind that I had to do something immediately. Nothing better came into my head than to catch hold of Sensei's back, like a flea, so that he couldn't reach me. However, when I tried to do my best to implement this idea, I found that my hands went through the emptiness, and instead of Sensei, I caught the air. I couldn't believe my eyes. Just now, he had been standing in front of me. It's probably easier to catch a ghost than Sensei, I thought. But then all my thoughts together with my heart sank all the way down when I realized that Sensei had already brought another group of hapless fighters to a complete stupor. I turned around and ran like a deer in the opposite direction. Yet, hardly had I made 2 steps as I got a light, painful push somewhere in the vicinity of my first and second cervical vertebrae. A bright, blinding light momentarily flashed before my eyes, as if I were illuminated with a bright, powerful projector of some yellowy pink color. My entire body became motionless in a rather unusual pose, with my arms frozen in the middle of a swing, torso bent forward, and right leg half lifted. I had no idea how I maintained balance. Only, at that time, this worried me least of all. Terrified, I observed what was happening to my muscles. As a single mechanism, they started to spasm despite my will and desire. And this spasm crept over all of my body. It seemed that the strain intensified with every second, and nothing was able to stop it. My body was being squeezed with such strength that I even thought I heard my spine crack. Yet, the most extraordinary thing was to feel the tension in my internal organs. It had never happened to me before. Even my strongest former headaches were trifles compared to this unbearable pain. My facial muscles got so strained that the face became distorted in a ghastly grimace. Amazingly, despite all these transformations in my strained body, my mind remained clear. My persona continued to see and hear everything distinctly. I saw the guys from our group, looking with fright at our frozen bodies, their facial expressions changing while they were observing what was happening. I could clearly hear Kostya's words addressed to me. "Wow, what a beauty you've become. I can't take my eyes off you." I wanted to reply to him sarcastically, but couldn't even move my tongue, not to mention utter a word. It seemed to me that an eternity passed while Sensei was bringing us back to life. But in reality, I hadn't been standing in this pose for even a minute. I felt pins and needles all over my body, as if all my extremities had gone numb simultaneously. My accomplices were actively rubbing their bodies. I hastily followed their example, though not as restrained emotionally. My body was aching and hurting. "Don't worry," Sensei reassured us. "In a couple of days, 3 days maximum, this pain will be over." From then until the end of additional training, all 6 of us were doing nothing but rubbing our extremities while suffering tireless jokes of the other guys. When our group of cripples came outside, Volodya, who stood next to Sensei, said with admiration, "Splendid! It was a great training day today. My muscles feel great." "He is calling this great," I thought, hardly moving my feet. "If it continues like this, next time I will arrive here in a wheelchair." Our group of unfortunate fighters slowly limped down the road, accompanied by cheerful jokes of other guys. "You look nice, friends, just like in that joke," Victor commented ironically. "Which joke?" "Well, 2 men meet each other at the emergency clinic, bandaged from head to toe. One asks the other, 'Where did you manage to get hurt like that?' 'I crashed into a garage.' 'Your car is probably smashed,' the first one sympathized. 'No, I was walking.' 'It's a funny joke, but my body really hurts,' I complained to the teacher. 'Just don't think about pain. After all, what is pain? Any pain is an illusion. How can it be an illusion if I really feel it? It just seems to you that you feel it. It is possible to stop feeling any pain at all if you wish strongly enough.' 'Really?' Slava asked with distrust. 'Even if they cut you up?' 'Even if they fry you,' Sensei answered with a smile and added more seriously, 'because pain is a reaction of certain nerve endings to irritation, and the nerve endings deliver a signal to the brain. If a person controls his body and mind perfectly, he can regulate his pain barrier. By the way, there is a Katido school in martial arts. where masters specially teach their followers not to feel pain. Lucky are the guys who study in that school, Ruslan said dreamily. They aren't so lucky, Sensei uttered jokingly. Before they learn something, they get hit in the head with a stick at least 100 times. At that moment, Yura apparently wanted to say something encouraging to his friend. But as soon as he opened his mouth and clapped Ruslan on the shoulder, the latter yelled out at the top of his voice, "Ah! Don't touch my torture remedies!" The whole crowd burst out laughing at such a precisely noted pun. "Well said," Stas said, laughing. While Zhenya continued, "Just wait and see. Such training sessions will inspire people to invent a new language." "Yeah," Victor added. "And they will speak with words made up of unknown letters." We went on our merry way to another round of new jokes, having partially forgotten about our unfortunate extremities. Only my stomach shuddered with laughter in pronounced painful convulsions. Andre spent this time thinking about something and didn't participate in our common conversation. Not paying any attention to our laughter, he asked Sensei, "This style, the point style that you showed us, is that the style of the old Lama?" "Oh, don't mix up a stone on the road with the Himalayas. In the old Lama style, the art has been brought to perfection. One handshake or simply involvement of an intermediary is enough to do anything you wish to a person." "Not bad," Andre said, surprised. "Oh, that's just child's play. There are more serious things, and maybe someday I will tell you about them." Saying his goodbyes at the tram stop and shaking everyone's hands, Sensei suddenly took Kostya aside and started whispering something to him. We tried our best, but were unable to hear anything. When Sensei and his group began to move away down the street, we literally tortured Kostya with questions. However, he laughed off all the attacks, ascribing everything to his personal secrets. We were silent on the way home. Only Kostya was trying to joke and cheer us up. I was deep in thought about my pain, and the main thing was that as soon as I started thinking about it purposefully, my body began to ache and to hurt with renewed power. My persona's only desire was to get home as quickly as possible. Fortunately, my house was in the center, 5 minutes away from the tram stop. Yet after walking me home, the guys were in no hurry to leave. Or to put it more precisely, it was Kostya who wasn't in a hurry and was as if bursting with jokes and other funny stories from daily life. I was already shifting from one foot to the other, mechanically smiling and showing with all my appearance that it was time to say goodbye. However, Kostya in no way reacted to that and went on with his jokes, merely looking nervously at his watch from time to time. After less than 10 minutes of our idle chat, Andre unexpectedly bent in two with a wild cry of pain and would have fallen to the ground in convulsions if Kostya, who stood close to him, hadn't caught him in time. But Kostya himself failed to keep balance and fell down on the ground, holding his friend up on his body. Frightened, we bent over them, trying to help Andre somehow. Out of fear, I forgot about all my aching muscles. Only Kostya seemed to stay calm. "It's all right, we should just let him sit down and rub his temples. It will pass in a minute," he said, lifting Andre. While we were fiddling about and settling the helpless guy down, Kostya glanced at his watch and uttered thoughtfully, "Exactly as Sensei said." "What power?" We looked at him, puzzled. "What did you say?" "I'll tell you later," Kostya said quickly and started to help rub Andre's temples. Gradually, the color of Andre's face began to return to normal. The yellow-blue spots vanished, and a slight flush appeared on his face. His breath became natural. In about a minute, which for us lasted for an eternity, Andre more or less recovered. Grabbing his head, he mumbled in confusion, "I don't understand what the matter is. That has never happened to me before. Maybe I overtrained or perhaps something is wrong with my body. But I'm still young." Kostya grinned, shaking his head. Wow. Sensei foretold even these words. "So, have you come back to life, you kook?" "Which words?" We didn't understand. But Kostya was entirely absorbed in the conversation with Andre. "Sensei had told me to ask whether you liked what happened to you." What? Andrei looked at Kostya in astonishment. I say, did you like this fall? When Andrei grasped these words, he became furious and got covered with red spots out of rage. Did I like it? Screw you. If you were dashed against the asphalt like that, would you like it? Oh, Kostya uttered with a smile. If he's cursing like mad, then for sure he came back to life. And then he added, Why are you boiling and puffing like a tea kettle? Cool down. This wasn't a simple fall, but a punishment from Sensei for your thoughts. What? Andrei got even more astonished. That's when everything boiled over in me too. What does it mean, a punishment? How could Sensei treat the guy this way and turn him into a helpless creature? Boy, oh boy, what kind of a nice man does such things? He drills into our heads that we should love our neighbor while he himself acts like that. Suddenly, a number of cases surfaced in my head, with demonstrations of strikes during training. They were harsh, ruthless, and rude towards a sparring partner. A wave of despair and anger immediately swept over me. Meanwhile, Andrei continued, What? Punishment from Sensei for my thoughts? For which thoughts? Are you crazy? And it actually means that you knew it all this time and said nothing to me? What a friend, damn it! And I was wondering why he was cracking jokes and looking at his watch. Turns out, it was just so he could relay Sensei's words in time. So have you relayed them? Have you enjoyed the spectacle enough, freak? Now it was Kostya's turn to blush. You're the fool. Sensei asked me to stay close to you so that you wouldn't break your empty head against the asphalt. And then, if you were able to listen, I was to pass on these words to you. Andrei was taken aback as if doused with a bucket of cold water. The two friends stared at each other intently. The conversation came to a strained pause. We were also standing bewildered by such a turn of events. So, what did Sensei ask you to relay to me? Andrei asked, still irritated, but already more composed. Sensei asked me to tell you that even a thought is material, and that the art must not be used against people. What does this have to do with the art? Which thought? What do you mean? Andrei was dumbfounded. You better know which thought. It was you who was mulling something over in your head all the way, not me. When? Andrei was even more surprised. Well, I was... In the tram, I was replaying in my mind the whole training from beginning to end, Andrei said, full of indignation. I'm not talking about the tram. When we were walking with Sensei, what were you thinking the whole way? Andrei frowned, intensively trying to recall that stretch of time. Well, we were laughing and telling jokes. That was us, and what about you? And what was I thinking about? After some time of focused reflection, Andrei uttered, amazed, Shoot, is it possible that it was for... He stopped in the middle of the sentence, and his indignation quickly changed into reflection on some shocking discovery. This event intrigued us even more, and our curiosity brimmed over. So, for what? For what? We showered Andrei with questions. At first, the guy tried to get rid of our intrusive questions, but finally he confessed, Well, it's an old story. I recently found some freaks who beat me up badly 5 years ago. Do you remember, Kostya, those big fellas? Those whom you swore a lifelong vengeance on. Well, that's an exaggeration. Those were your words, Kostya said, shrugging his shoulders. Well, yes, mine. But let's just say, those guys were the reason I started my intensive karate training. So, when I was walking that evening, I was thinking it over. Andrei became somewhat embarrassed, hanging his head. Apparently, it wasn't easy for him to confess it, but plucking up his courage, he continued. So, I thought that this art would help me, and they cannot hide anywhere from my revenge. After his words, silence fell. Kostya said with a sigh, That's quite a story. You see, it's your own fault. You dream about devil knows what, and I turn out to be the guilty one. Are these Sensei's words too? Slava chuckled, trying to joke. Kostya looked at him in such a way that Slava immediately got embarrassed. And now imagine, Kostya continued addressing Andrei, How shocked those big fellows would be. They are actually ordinary people with their own merits and demerits, just like us. Yet you are at least somehow prepared mentally, or rather you know about this power. But what about them? Even if any of them survived after such a fright, just imagine what would happen to them later. Each of them would probably think that he was sick with epilepsy. You felt unpleasant, but how would they feel? Sensei asked me to remind you that any blow delivered by you in anger will come back to you in the end. And he also said, you should not wish bad to other people, even in your thoughts, because with the power of your thought, you are setting a trap for yourself, for your body and mind. And the more you think about it, the stronger its net becomes, and the tighter its loop. The only way out is to become a friend to your enemy and to forgive his deeds, for you are also imperfect. Kostya pondered a little more and added, well, I don't think I forgot anything. That's all. Now you may be free. Free in what sense? Andrei didn't understand. Is Sensei booting me out? Well, he didn't tell me anything about that. It's me who's letting you go. Ah, Andrei drawled with a smile and started to get up from the ground together with Kostya. And why have you fallen down? Why? You should eat less. I'm no Rambo to catch a bull like you. We laughed and said goodbye to each other in a cheerful mood. I was very happy that everything ended so well. A revolution of feelings took place in my soul again. Indeed, whose fault is it that there is so much evil around us? It's our own fault, because we do not control our desires and then we just get what we deserve. Moreover, we yell and rebel, asking, for what? We should think more often about good things and do good to people, and maybe the world around us will change, at least in our understanding. And our understanding is actually our real world. If I had realized this earlier, I wouldn't have been now paying for my egocentrism and megalomania with my own health and life. Oh, if only I had known it before, I would have been more confident about tomorrow. But since fate decrees it this way, I will at least try to live whatever time is left with dignity, like a human being. Sensei was right when he once said, it's not the number of years lived that is important, but their quality, how, and not how many. Yes, we are responsible for all that we think and do. Why was I angry with Sensei? We ourselves are to blame, while he is just an observer of our reality, our irresponsibility and carelessness. He judges from the standpoint of his inner world, his knowledge and his high moral values. In order to initially understand him, one needs to at least become a human. Chapter 19. At home, I kept pondering over the event that had just occurred, and then I recalled my body. All this time, while I was distracted by my thoughts, the pain was muffled and existed at some distant level of thought. But as soon as I recalled my overtrained muscles, they immediately responded with a sharp pain, just as a loyal dog responds to the call of its owner by barking. My entire body started crying out and breaking apart, and my mind began to feel intensely sorry for my poor body, blaming my true self for the ordeals I subjected it to, sympathizing with and being compassionate towards my extremities. I forced myself to sit in the lotus pose to meditate. It was very hard to relax and even harder to concentrate. But still, my persistence brought me a little result. In one of my attempts at purposeful concentration, the pain was forgotten. Meditation went smoothly. Only when a stray thought flashed across my mind did the pain commence again. I was clearly aware of feeling a streamlet running down my arm. Then came a thought, this arm muscle hurts the most. Stop! Aha! I got you, troublemaker! You're spoiling all my attempts again. Never mind. This time I didn't manage to start a conversation with Sensei, but next time, at the meditation class, I will certainly find out how to deal with you. When I came out of the meditation, I started to reflect logically. I wonder if I'm developing schizophrenia. I've started talking to myself and catching someone inside of me. Maybe I'm already going crazy because of such events. And immediately after that, another thought appeared in my mind. It's a good indicator. If you thought like this more often, you would reach your goal faster. At some internal, inaccessible level, I understood what was meant. But my mind yelled, "What goal? Who's speaking again?" Completely confused by my thoughts about who is who and what I really wanted, I fell asleep, following the example of my ruthlessly exhausted flesh. The next day, my body became completely alien. Not only was it hurting, but it was also moving like a rusty robot. I became even more interested, as I had never seen myself in such a state. The autopilot evidently got turned off. I had to invent new ways to operate my body, even just to put clothes on. It was good that my parents went to work and didn't see this comedy of my horrors. Since I was busy with this disobedient machine, I was almost late for school. I felt pretty much okay during the classes, although it was strange to feel like a robot. The very last was the gym class. That was the worst. I tried to obtain leave from the teacher, but he was a rather conservative man and an awful bureaucrat. He didn't care about our aches. My only chance of leaving was to bring him an official medical exemption certificate. I had one at home, hidden far away from my parents, because I liked gym classes and didn't want to sit them out despite the doctor's opinions. Moreover, the exercises we did were never very difficult, in my opinion. During the training with Sensei, we tortured our bodies much more. But today, for the first time ever, I regretted that I didn't bring the certificate with me. Though my body had loosened up slightly during the day, I had a hard time with the warm-up. And today, as if on purpose, there was a push-up test. I definitely won't survive it. I won't be able to do even one push-up, especially after yesterday. My persona thought, "He is such a bureaucrat and will not even listen to me without a certificate." And I began chastising this man in my evil thoughts. During the next pause, while thinking of a word worse than the previous one, suddenly Sensei's words popped up in my memory. "You should not wish bad to other people, even in your thoughts." Gosh, what am I doing? My persona perked up. I'm creating a trap for myself. Cooling my temper down a little bit, I started to think soberly. What's the point in swearing at him in my thoughts and looking at him gloomily? I would become more upset and would be rude to him during the test. He would return the favor, give me a bad mark, and call my parents. My parents would find out that I didn't bring the certificate to school and would be upset too. Why do I need all that? And what if I try to put myself in the teacher's shoes, as Sensei says? After all, is it his fault that I came to the class, being a wreck? Of course not. He doesn't know that the whole of yesterday evening I was actually preparing for his test. Then why should I be angry with him? He is just conscientious about doing his job. And as far as my medical certificate is concerned, he must give an account for his classes. What if the principal or some school authority comes to check on him? I can understand his position in this case. Thus, having put my thoughts in order, I noticed that my anger vanished. And now I was able to think about how to solve this problem peacefully. After the warm-up, I again approached the teacher and calmly explained the situation to him. I said that the day before, I had trained intensively and had terribly suffered. But at the next class, I would certainly do the push-ups, even twice as many. I also added that I completely understood that he's fed up with our continuous excuses. I hope you understand you were young once, too. The last sentence burst from me by accident, but obviously stirred up some good memories from the teacher's past, because for the next 15 minutes, our entire group was listening to stories about his athletic, turbulent youth. And when the test finally began, I asked him, "So should I do the push-ups?" "That's all right." He genially waved his hand. "You'll do it next time. Let's consider that you didn't have enough time today." To the great joy of the others, half of the class also didn't have enough time. When the bell rang, my classmates said with smiles, "Cool. Listen, maybe you will also evoke the teacher's memories of their faraway youth in other classes. And they won't have time to ask us about homework. That would be great." "I'm not a wizard," my persona answered jokingly. "I'm just learning." After the class, I had a rather pleasant feeling inside. Nobody suffered moral damage, and everyone even ended up satisfied. That pleased my ego, and my megalomania started to grow by leaps and bounds. I only noticed it, though, when my friends joked about it while listening to me in the evening. "You really inflated this story like a soap bubble," Andre remarked with a smile. "What is so special about that? I use tricks like that almost every class. You simply need to act with ingenuity and humor." "Right, but you don't tame your anger every class." Andre thought about it and said, "That's true, but humor has always helped me to communicate with teachers." "Listen," Kostya tapped him on the shoulder. "This is a brilliant method to fight anger. Just recall Sensei's guys, Zhenya, Stas, and the others. They never stop joking." "Exactly," confirmed Andre. "You see, everything is simple, as Sensei says. You were wondering the whole night how to fight your anger. Here's your answer. Now you'll have to joke with your mind all your life." And then Kostya added soothingly, "Just don't worry. We will bring you delicious cakes to the mental hospital." "Stop it, man. You always turn everything upside down." The guys laughed, and we entered the overcrowded tram. Already on our way, Kostya said to Andre, "By the way, I haven't spent this night in vain either." "With whom?" Andre inquired with a smile. "Dirty mind. Not with whom, but on what." "Think deeper. I made a brilliant discovery." "In the field of self-love?" "I'm serious. Listen, I've discovered a chain of events. If those big fellas hadn't beaten you up 5 years ago, you wouldn't have started to practice karate. If you hadn't started to practice martial arts, you wouldn't have pulled me into this field either. And if you hadn't pulled me into it, we would have never met Sensei and wouldn't have learned what we have learned and what we are now learning. Even if we would read this information somewhere, we would have considered it complete nonsense. But this way, we saw, as they say, with our own eyes and became convinced. In short, if you hadn't been beaten up back then, we wouldn't have found this spiritual gold mine." "That's it." "I agree. But what makes you think that we met Sensei because of you? The address of his school was given to us by a complete stranger from that previous wushu school. Neither you nor I knew him closely. We simply started a conversation about psychic phenomena by chance and later found out about Sensei." "Right, but it was me who brought you to this training," Kostya defended his theory. "You were so resistant, remember? You didn't want to go. And that guy appeared exactly that day by chance. He was waiting for his friend in the changing room." "Yes, he was waiting, but he would have kept silent if he hadn't seen our magazine with an article about psychics." "Which magazine?" "Remember, Tatiana brought it from home that day. You and I were outraged that we would have to lug this load with us all day instead of just giving it back in the evening." "Yeah, exactly," Kostya recalled. "I put it on the windowsill and that guy was probably just bored sitting around, so he asked if he could read it. Then, as you know, one word led to another, and he gave us Sensei's address." "Right, that's exactly how it happened." Kostya sighed and added, "It's always like that. Such minor facts ruin the most beautiful hypothesis." "All right, then my theory is this. If you hadn't pulled me into martial arts, I wouldn't have brought you to this training. And as an additional remark, had Tatiana not brought the magazine, our group wouldn't have met Sensei and so forth." "Still, everything started with the magazine," persisted Andre, further developing his thought, "and with the article. We became interested in those articles because... Why?" "What do you mean, why? Because... It was she who launched all of that. She infected all of us with stories of phenomenal people," said Kostya, nodding towards me. "Exactly!" The guys looked at me. "And why did you become interested in them?" "Me?" My persona got somewhat stumped, but quickly recovered my wits. "Me? I was inspired by movies." "Oh, and movies were filmed by..." The guys got carried away, untwisting the whole chain of imaginary events. Tatiana smiled and said, "If you keep on this way, you will soon unwittingly arrive back at primitive man." And she mimicked them in a funny way. "If that man had been caught by a saber-toothed tiger, we wouldn't have existed and therefore wouldn't have met Sensei." Hey, that's a fine idea, smiled Kostya. That's men for you, complained Tatiana. They always look for logic in everything. We have met Sensei, and that's great. Hence, that's the way it should be. It's destiny. And that's all. There is nothing to argue about.